Last year I did my best of video as a live stream, and you guys really seemed to dig it. That's why this year we're bringing it back, but in full, proper video fashion. This way I could run down the full list for you of both my favorite and least favorite products in each category, and hopefully not forget anything along the way. Got one of these and need to know how to cool it? Check out Enermax's all-new Lictech TR42 series of coolers, featuring a full-cover copper baseplate, rubber vibration-dampening radiator pads, and an all-new block top design with addressable RGBs. The Lictech is designed specifically for the new Threadripper 2 series of CPUs and comes in both 240 and 360mm flavors. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. So let's establish some ground rules here before we get into the juicy bits. Number one, this is of course my list and is therefore derived from my opinion. You may agree or disagree, and that of course is expected, so feel free to discuss in the comments what your choices for any of these categories are. Number two, I'm only going to be able to talk about products that I've actually had my hands on for testing, for a build, or to mess around with at a trade show. If I haven't had a chance to at least sort of get to know a product, I don't think it's fair to comment on it one way or another. There will be one or two notable exceptions to this, and you'll see that as we move forward. Number three, we will be discussing the best and worst in the following categories: CPU, GPU, motherboard, case, and peripheral/other, which will encompass things like memory, accessories, power supplies, etc. At the end, I'll also name my overall product of the year, which comes with, well, nothing. We don't have Gamers Nexus money over here. Let's kick it off with CPUs. This year we saw the launch of the Ryzen 2000 series, including two new APUs, Threadripper 2nd Gen, and the enormous and relatively impractical for most people 2990WX. We saw Intel's Coffee Lake refresh of Kaby Lake refresh of Skylake in the 9000 series, and also an almost complete retread of the Skylake X chips with the HEDT 9900 CPUs. While we kind of harp on Intel for bringing back old architectures, it's also worthwhile to note that AMD this year didn't really bring anything revolutionary to the table either. So even though we had mainstream and enthusiast launches from both Team Red and Team Blue, the biggest advances were in core and thread count, and not necessarily in architecture or process shrink or anything along those lines. Last year I gave CPU of the year to the Ryzen 5 1600, and I think it's fitting that this year we go in a completely new and unexpected direction and give the prize to the Ryzen 5 2600. This 6-core part really is the best balance of the three important metrics of CPU evaluation: multi-threaded workloads, gaming performance, and price. Yes, there are certainly products out there that rate better on one or two axes, but at $160, nothing comes close to what the 2600 can do. It's a capable gaming processor, can be used to stream or edit videos, and is well within reach of most builders price-wise. For reference, Intel's closest price competitor is a dual-core i3. Just a quick correction while editing, guys. It's actually a quad-core i3 with no hyper-threading. Still not really in the same class. A laughable comparison. As a bonus, you can get a fully featured B450 motherboard with good overclocking capabilities for around $120, making your total platform investment under $300. The biggest disappointment of the year for me is the Skylake X refresh. The 9980XE is one of the only components on today's list that I haven't actually had any hands-on time with. But to be honest, from everything that I've watched and read, I'm not missing much, and neither are you. Now, if you look at it in a vacuum, the 9980XE is actually very impressive with 18 cores and relatively high IPC and clock speeds. However, we don't live in a vacuum, and the 7980XE already exists. The 9980XE is the exact same chip clocked ever so slightly higher, and the solder TIM is actually a detriment as it doesn't allow for delidding. Performance is basically a toss-up between the two, so it's not entirely clear why the 9980XE even exists. Moving on to GPUs, there was only one major launch this year, and that of course was NVIDIA's RTX series. The 2070, 2080, and 2080 Ti dominated the news cycle for the last few months of the year ever since they were formally announced in August. and they represent both the best and the worst of 2018 if you look at it in a certain way. AMD was largely absent from the GPU scene until the 12nm Polaris refresh RX 590, and while that's a fine product, it doesn't really rate on the excitement scale one way or the other. I think there's only really one reasonable choice for GPU of the year, and that's the 2080 Ti. While the pricing and availability of these cards remains an issue and they're not in any way accessible for a mainstream audience, the almost full-fat GT102 chip is a hell of a thing. It's 25 to 30% faster than the 2080 and the 1080 Ti. It has massive overclocking headroom, especially on the memory side, and it's clearly the best solution for single card 4K gaming if that's your jam. It also introduces the hardware necessary for real-time ray tracing, even if that whole software and hardware ecosystem is far from mature. On the what the hell were they thinking side of the coin, we have purposefully misleading releases from both Nvidia and AMD. The GT 1030 DDR4 edition and the RX 580 2048 SP are both rehashes of previous products that perform significantly worse than their original namesakes. The GT 1030 swaps slower DDR4 for the original GDDR5, resulting in performance hits of 20 to 40% across the board. The fact that there's no meaningful indication on the packaging that you're buying the DDR4 version of the card, this is just kind of a dick move by the Green Team, preying on those consumers who likely don't know any better. The RX 580 is maybe slightly less offensive and is a product meant for the Asian market and internet cafes, but the fact that AMD calls this an RX 580 is the real problem. It's in fact just an RX 570 in disguise. Again, we see misleading marketing and just shady business practices overall. Shame on both of your houses. Motherboards I won't dive too deep into, as there are of course far more releases in this category than any other. Let's focus on general product categories rather than specific products, as that'll make things a little bit easier. Motherboard, or motherboards of the year for me, are the B450 boards like the B450 Tomahawk, B450 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi, and the Strix B450F Gaming. All three are between $120 and $130 and will be perfectly happy to house any of AMD's second-gen Ryzen processors. Even the high-end 2700X wouldn't be overkill for any of these boards, and they perform well, have good power delivery, a whole host of features, and they look great. We also saw advances in AMD's HEDT X399 boards with the MSI Meg Creation and X399 Aorus Extreme, and on the Intel side, EVGA's X299 Dark was a standout for me as well. The biggest disappointments were probably the crop of Z390 boards that came out following the Intel 9th gen release. They're not inherently bad, but they're not significantly better than the Z370 boards, and a lot of them cost an arm and a leg. Not to mention that many of them were poorly equipped to handle the power requirements of the new 8-core 9900K. For cases, no matter how many high-end products come through the office with off-the-wall features like vertical airflow pathways, built-in AIOs with reservoirs, curved tempered glass panels, or completely rotatable interiors, I keep coming back to Lian Li PC011 Dynamic as my favorite case of the year. Comparably, it's not the biggest, it doesn't have the most features, and it's certainly not the most expensive at a very reasonable $130. But ever since we saw this case at CES last year, I knew it would find a spot on my desk, and in fact, it's sitting in my office housing my editing system right now. It's surprisingly spacious given its footprint. It can house eATX motherboards with a little maneuvering. The top radiator and fan spacing is superb. Airflow options are plentiful despite the lack of rear exhaust, and the glass front panel makes for a unique aesthetic and a different vantage point to view your system build. Not to mention that this has become one of the most popular chassis for water coolers, as custom reservoirs have popped up that mount to the back wall and make for killer designs. The biggest disappointment of the year is, let's just go, I guess, with the 500D from Corsair. I was so hyped for this case after seeing it at CES, but despite its obvious good looks, it was a poor performer thermally and was way overpriced. Similarly, the Cooler Master C700M at $430 and the Thermaltake A500 at $220 didn't do themselves any favors by coming in at such high price points. The C700M is a luxury item that is enormous and fairly awkward to build in, and the A500 is a really basic case masquerading behind the facade of a premium aluminum exterior. Let's move on to our last category, which I'll do rapid fire style. My favorite mouse this year, and honestly maybe ever, is the excellent SteelSeries Rival 650. It has super comfortable soft touch exterior, diffused RGB lighting, pinpoint precise tracking up to 12,000 DPI, adjustable weighting, and acceptable battery life for a wireless mouse. My favorite keyboard of the year is the Corsair K70 Mark II SE. Not only is the white and aluminum exterior distinctive and beautiful, but I've discovered that MX speed switches are my new favorite kind of cherry. I want to give a quick mention to the Aorus memory kit here as well, which introduced the concept of dummy memory sticks to fill up all 4 DIMM slots without a huge increase in price. G.Skill's Trident Z Royal also needs a shout out here because, I mean, just look at it. I'm not big on gaming headsets, and this year I've only looked at a few, so I'll leave that segment to those with more experience in this field, like Brian from Bad Seed Tech, so go check out his channel if you're looking for those kinds of reviews. I was disappointed in Corsair's Dark Core SE mouse, not because of its feel, performance, or appearance. It was all about the battery life, which was shockingly poor. I often couldn't make it through the day without having to recharge, which is just unacceptable. For overall product of the year, I think, to be honest, I'm gonna have to go with AMD and their 2nd gen Ryzen parts. AMD is making mainstream PC gaming accessible to a wide audience, and their processors are excellent at doing basically everything you want them to do. Yes, Intel might feature higher IPC, slightly better gaming performance, but you're talking at a cost that's probably double of what this thing costs right here. And that's just not really reasonable for a lot of folks. So thank you very much, AMD, for releasing a product that not only performs well, but is also priced reasonably. It's kind of a rarity in this market. So that's my take on the year in PC hardware 2018. What are your favorite or least favorite products? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to get subscribed to the channel if you're not already. Check out the merch store link down below for shirts like this one. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.